The rain fell hard on New Pittsburgh that evening, drops hitting the metal streets of the colony with steady rhythm. Richard Hammond pulled his coat tighter as he walked beside his son Danny through the industrial district. The boy's small hand gripped his father's arm, while his other hand held a white cane that tapped against the ground. Richard had not planned to be in this part of the colony, but his private shuttle had malfunctioned and they needed to wait for repairs. Danny had complained of hunger, and Richard spotted a small diner across the street with a flickering neon sign that read Rosie's Place, daughter. The year was 2247, and humanity had spread across dozens of star systems, building colonies on distant worlds and creating an empire among the stars. Richard Hammond owned one of the largest technology companies in the Terran Colonial Alliance, worth billions of credits. His company built the neural processors that powered everything from personal devices to massive starship computers. But none of that wealth could fix what had been broken 2 years ago when the shuttle accident took his wife's life and left Danny blind at just 6 years old. They entered the diner and a small bell chimed above the door. The place smelled like coffee and fried food. About a dozen people sat at various tables and booths, mostly workers from the nearby factories still wearing their coveralls. The floor was old tile, cracked in places, and the booths had seen better days. This was not the kind of establishment Richard usually visited. His world consisted of executive lounges and five-star restaurants where servers knew his preferences before he arrived. But tonight he was just a father with a hungry son. A woman appeared from behind the counter. She wore a simple uniform with a name tag that said Maya. Her dark skin gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and her smile reached her eyes in a way that seemed genuine. She looked to be in her mid-20s with her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She grabbed 2 menus and walked toward them. Richard began to speak, but Maya had already noticed Danny's cane. She knelt down slightly to be at the boy's level. Her voice was warm when she spoke. "Hello there. My name is Maya, and I will be taking care of you both today. I'm going to lead you to a really nice booth by the window where you can hear the rain. Would that be okay?" Danny nodded and smiled, a rare expression on his face these days. Maya gently touched his shoulder to let him know where she was and slowly guided them to the booth. She made sure to describe the path as they walked. "We are passing 3 tables on your left, and there is a support beam coming up on your right in about 4 steps. Perfect, here we are." Richard slid into the booth and helped Danny settle in across from him. Maya placed the menus down but kept one in her hand. She looked at Danny with kind eyes. "Would you like me to tell you what we have today? I can describe everything so you know exactly what you might enjoy." Danny's face lit up. "Yes, please." Maya sat down at the edge of the booth and began describing the menu items. She did not just read the names. She painted pictures with her words. "We have a turkey sandwich that comes with fresh lettuce that is crispy and cold, tomatoes that are sweet and juicy, and the turkey is sliced thin so it is tender when you bite it. The bread is toasted just enough to give it a little crunch on the outside but stays soft inside. We also have chicken soup that is warm and rich with big pieces of chicken, soft carrots, and noodles that are fun to slurp." Richard watched in amazement as his son listened with complete attention. Danny asked questions about different items, and Maya answered each one with patience. She never sounded rushed, even though Richard could see other customers waiting for service. After several minutes, Danny decided on the chicken soup and a grilled cheese sandwich. Richard ordered coffee and whatever the special was. Maya stood and smiled. "Great choices. I will be right back with your drinks. Danny, your water glass is going to be at 2 o'clock from your plate, okay? That means if your plate is the center of a clock, your glass will be where the 2 would be. That way you will always know where it is." Danny nodded seriously, and Richard felt something tighten in his chest. It had been so long since someone treated his son with such natural respect. Most people either ignored Danny's blindness and expected him to function normally, or they treated him like he was fragile and helpless. Maya did neither. She simply adapted her service to meet his needs without making it seem like a burden or something special. The food arrived quickly, and Maya had cut Danny's sandwich into quarters without being asked. She quietly told him how everything was arranged on his plate using the clock method. "Your soup bowl is in the center, sandwich quarters are at 9 o'clock, and there are carrot sticks at 3 o'clock. Danny reached out carefully and found each item exactly where Maya said it would be. He began eating with more confidence than Richard had seen in months. Halfway through the meal, Danny reached for his water but misjudged the distance. His hand knocked the glass over and water spilled across the table and began dripping onto the floor. Richard quickly grabbed napkins, but he could feel the stares from other customers. A man at the next table muttered something about watching your kids. Danny's face crumbled and tears began forming in his eyes. "I am sorry, Dad. I am sorry." Before Richard could respond, Maya appeared with a towel and a smile. "Hey, no worries at all. I knock over drinks all the time and I can see just fine. This table has a wobbly spot and I should have warned you about it. Let me get you a fresh glass and we will be all set." She cleaned up the spill efficiently while chatting with Danny about how her little brother, Leo, once knocked over an entire pitcher of juice at breakfast and it went everywhere, even on the ceiling somehow. Danny started giggling at the mental image. Maya returned with a new glass and placed it carefully at the 2 o'clock position again. "There you go, all better." Richard's coffee had gone cold, but he did not care. He sat watching this waitress in a rundown diner show more grace and kindness in 10 minutes than most people in his elite circles showed in a lifetime. She had seen his son, truly seen him, not as a disability or a problem, but as a person who deserved dignity and respect. When they finished eating, Maya brought the check and a small container. "Danny the cook made some extra cookies today and he wanted you to have some. They are chocolate chip and still warm." She placed the container in Danny's hands. Richard paid the bill and left a tip that was probably more than Maya made in a week. As they prepared to leave, Danny tugged on his father's sleeve. "Can we come back here again?" Richard looked at Maya, who was already moving to help another customer. Something had shifted inside him tonight. "Of course we can, son." The rain fell hard on New Pittsburgh that evening, drops hitting the metal streets of the colony with steady rhythm. Richard Hammond pulled his coat tighter as he walked beside his son Danny through the industrial district. The boy's small hand gripped his father's arm, while his other hand held a white cane that tapped against the ground. Richard had not planned to be in this part of the colony, but his private shuttle had malfunctioned and they needed to wait for repairs. Danny had complained of hunger and Richard spotted a small diner across the street with a flickering neon sign that read Rosie's Place. The year was 2247, and humanity had spread across dozens of star systems, building colonies on distant worlds and creating an empire among the stars. Richard Hammond owned one of the largest technology companies in the Terran Colonial Alliance, worth billions of credits. His company built the neural processors that powered everything from personal devices to massive starship computers. But none of that wealth could fix what had been broken 2 years ago when the shuttle accident took his wife's life and left Danny blind at just 6 years old. They entered the diner and a small bell chimed above the door. The place smelled like coffee and fried food. About a dozen people sat at various tables and booths, mostly workers from the nearby factories still wearing their coveralls. The floor was old tile, cracked in places, and the booths had seen better days. This was not the kind of establishment Richard usually visited. His world consisted of executive lounges and 5-star restaurants, where servers knew his preferences before he arrived. But tonight he was just a father with a hungry son. A woman appeared from behind the counter. She wore a simple uniform with a name tag that said Maya. Her dark skin gleamed under the fluorescent lights and her smile reached her eyes in a way that seemed genuine. She looked to be in her mid-20s with her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She grabbed 2 menus and walked toward them. Richard began to speak, but Maya had already noticed Danny's cane. She knelt down slightly to be at the boy's level. Her voice was warm when she spoke. "Hello there. My name is Maya, and I will be taking care of you both today. I am going to lead you to a really nice booth by the window where you can hear the rain. Would that be okay?" Danny nodded and smiled, a rare expression on his face these days. Maya gently touched his shoulder to let him know where she was and slowly guided them to the booth. She made sure to describe the path as they walked. "We are passing 3 tables on your left, and there is a support beam coming up on your right in about 4 steps. Perfect, here we are." Richard slid into the booth and helped Danny settle in across from him. Maya placed the menus down but kept one in her hand. She looked at Danny with kind eyes. "Would you like me to tell you what we have today? I can describe everything so you know exactly what you might enjoy." Danny's face lit up. "Yes, please." Maya sat down at the edge of the booth and began describing the menu items. She did not just read the names. She painted pictures with her words. "We have a turkey sandwich that comes with fresh lettuce that is crispy and cold, tomatoes that are sweet and juicy, and the turkey is sliced thin so it is tender when you bite it. The bread is toasted just enough to give it a little crunch on the outside but stays soft inside. We also have chicken soup that is warm and rich with big pieces of chicken, soft carrots, and noodles that are fun to slurp. Richard watched in amazement as his son listened with complete attention. Danny asked questions about different items and Maya answered each one with patience. She never sounded rushed, even though Richard could see other customers waiting for service. After several minutes, Danny decided on the chicken soup and a grilled cheese sandwich. Richard ordered coffee and whatever the special was. Maya stood and smiled. Great choices. I will be right back with your drinks. Danny, your water glass is going to be at 2 o'clock from your plate, okay? That means if your plate is the center of a clock, your glass will be where the 2 would be. That way you will always know where it is. Danny nodded seriously and Richard felt something tighten in his chest. It had been so long since someone treated his son with such natural respect. Most people either ignored Danny's blindness and expected him to function normally, or they treated him like he was fragile and helpless. Maya did neither. She simply adapted her service to meet his needs without making it seem like a burden or something special. The food arrived quickly, and Maya had cut Danny's sandwich into quarters without being asked. She quietly told him how everything was arranged on his plate using the clock method. Your soup bowl is in the center, sandwich quarters are at 9 o'clock, and there are carrot sticks at 3 o'clock. Danny reached out carefully and found each item exactly where Maya said it would be. He began eating with more confidence than Richard had seen in months. Halfway through the meal, Danny reached for his water but misjudged the distance. His hand knocked the glass over and water spilled across the table and began dripping onto the floor. Richard quickly grabbed napkins, but he could feel the stares from other customers. A man at the next table muttered something about watching your kids. Danny's face crumbled and tears began forming in his eyes. I am sorry, Dad. I am sorry. Before Richard could respond, Maya appeared with a towel and a smile. Hey, no worries at all. I knock over drinks all the time and I can see just fine. This table has a wobbly spot and I should have warned you about it. Let me get you a fresh glass and we will be all set. She cleaned up the spill efficiently while chatting with Danny about how her little brother, Leo, once knocked over an entire pitcher of juice at breakfast and it went everywhere, even on the ceiling somehow. Danny started giggling at the mental image. Maya returned with a new glass and placed it carefully at the 2 o'clock position again. There you go, all better. Richard's coffee had gone cold, but he did not care. He sat watching this waitress in a rundown diner show more grace and kindness in 10 minutes than most people in his elite circles showed in a lifetime. She had seen his son, truly seen him, not as a disability or a problem, but as a person who deserved dignity and respect. When they finished eating, Maya brought the check and a small container. Danny, the cook, made some extra cookies today and he wanted you to have some. They are chocolate chip and still warm. She placed the container in Danny's hands. Richard paid the bill and left a tip that was probably more than Maya made in a week. As they prepared to leave, Danny tugged on his father's sleeve. Can we come back here again? Richard looked at Maya, who was already moving to help another customer. Something had shifted inside him tonight. Of course we can, son. Maya stared at the business card for the 3rd time that evening. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the air recycler and the distant sound of machinery from the factories below. Leo sat across from her at their small kitchen table. His homework spread out in front of him, but his attention focused entirely on his sister. So let me get this straight. A billionaire walked into your diner, you were nice to his kid, and now he wants to hire you and pay for my school? Leo's voice carried equal parts disbelief and excitement. Maya rubbed her temples. That is the basic summary, yes. And you are hesitating because things like this do not happen to people like us, Leo. There has to be a catch. Maybe he wants something else. Maybe this is how rich people operate. They make promises and then you end up trapped in some contract you did not fully understand. Leo closed his textbook. Maya, you are the smartest person I know. You got into Lunatech. You could have been anything you wanted. Instead, you have been slinging hash and working yourself to death for 3 years to take care of me. Maybe the universe is finally paying you back. Maya felt her throat tighten. Taking care of you is not something I need to be paid back for. You are my brother. It is what family does, I know. But that does not mean you should have to sacrifice everything. Leo reached across and took her hand. What did Grandpa always say? Maya smiled despite herself. When opportunity knocks, at least open the door and see who is there before you decide to slam it shut. Exactly. So call the man, talk to him, ask questions. If it smells bad, you walk away. But if it is real, if this is actually a chance for you to do something amazing, then you owe it to yourself to try. Maya looked at her baby brother, who was not so much a baby anymore. At 15, he was already taller than her, his voice deep, his shoulders broad from the physical labor of his part-time job at the spaceport. He had grown up too fast, forced into maturity by circumstances neither of them had chosen. She wanted better for him. She wanted him to have the opportunities she had lost. What if I fail? What if I get there and realize I really am just a waitress pretending to be something more? Leo squeezed her hand. Then you will still be a waitress who tried, but I do not think you will fail. You taught me everything I know about robotics from library downloads and free videos. You helped Mrs. Patterson's son learn to read after the school said he could not. You figured out how to make our food credits stretch when the mine company cut off survivor benefits. You are not just smart, Maya. You are resourceful. That is worth more than any degree. Maya stood and walked to the small window that looked out over the colony. Lights twinkled in the darkness, each one representing lives being lived, dreams being chased, futures being built. She had spent 3 years keeping her head down, surviving rather than living. Maybe Leo was right. Maybe it was time to open the door. She picked up her comm device and pulled up the contact information from Richard Hammond's card. Before she could overthink it, she pressed the call button. It rang twice before a smooth artificial voice answered. Hammond Interstellar Solutions, this is Cypher. How may I direct your call? My name is Maya Johnson. I am calling for Richard Hammond. He gave me his personal contact. One moment, please. The line clicked, and then Richard's voice came through, warm and immediate. Maya, I am glad you called. I have not made a decision yet. But I have questions, of course. Ask anything. Why me? You must know dozens of people with actual qualifications. People with degrees and experience. Why offer this to a waitress you met once? Richard was quiet for a moment. Can I be completely honest? Because my son smiled. I know that sounds simple. Maybe even foolish for a business decision. But Danny has not been the same since his mother died and he lost his sight. I have hired the best therapists, the most expensive specialists. I've tried everything. And then you spent 30 minutes with him and he remembered what it felt like to be happy. That tells me you have something that cannot be taught or bought. You have the ability to see people, really see them, and respond to what they need. That is exactly what my project needs. Maya leaned against the counter. What exactly is this project? You mentioned neural interfaces, but I do not really know what that means. We are developing technology that allows the brain to interface directly with computers and digital systems. For most people, it is about convenience. But for people with disabilities, it could be life-changing. A blind person could navigate through spatial data translated to sound. Someone paralyzed could control a wheelchair or even a prosthetic limb just by thinking. The technology exists, but it is clunky and impersonal. We have been designing it based on medical data and theoretical models. What we have been missing is input from people who actually understand what it is like to live with these challenges. And you think I can provide that? I think you can provide perspective my engineers do not have. I think you can test our designs and tell us when we are building something functional, but not actually helpful. I think you can be the voice of the people we are trying to serve. Richard paused. Look, I will not lie to you. Some people on my team will question your qualifications. Some will think I am making a mistake. But I did not build a billion credit company by only taking safe bets. What about Leo? You said you would sponsor his education regardless of my decision. Is that real or just a tactic to pressure me? It is real. I have already had my legal team draw up the scholarship papers. Leo gets full funding for any accredited university or technical school he qualifies for. All expenses covered for 4 years. Or until he completes his degree, whichever comes first. The only condition is that he maintains a 3.0 grade average, which based on his current performance, should not be a problem. Whether you take this job or not, that scholarship is his. Maya felt tears threatening again. I do not understand why you are being so generous, because I can be, and it costs me nothing that matters. Because your brother deserves a fair shot at his dreams just like you did. Because maybe if more people with resources actually use them to help others, the galaxy would be a better place. Richard's voice softened. I know you do not know me well enough to trust me yet. So how about this? Come to the facility tomorrow. Meet the team, see the project, ask whatever questions you need to ask. If at any point you feel uncomfortable or think this is not right for you, You walk away with no hard feelings and Leo's scholarship still intact. Maya took a deep breath. What time tomorrow? Whenever works for you. I can send a car, or you can take public transport and I will reimburse you. Whatever makes you comfortable. I can be there at 10 in the morning. Perfect. I will send you the address and access codes. Maya, I know this is scary. Change always is. But I think you might surprise yourself with what you are capable of. They ended the call and Maya set down her comm device. Leo was watching her with barely contained excitement. So, I am going to meet with him tomorrow, just to look. No promises. Leo jumped up and hugged her so hard he lifted her off the ground. I am proud of you, sis. I have not done anything yet. Yes, you have. You opened the door. That is the hardest part. Maya hugged him back and tried to quiet the voice in her head that said this was too good to be true. She had learned early that the galaxy was not kind to people like them. Good things came with prices. Opportunities had hidden costs. But as she looked at Leo's hopeful face, she thought maybe, just maybe, this time could be different. That night, Maya lay in bed unable to sleep. Her mind raced with possibilities and fears. What would she wear to a technology company? How should she act around brilliant scientists? What if they asked her technical questions she could not answer? What if Richard realized his mistake the moment she walked in? But underneath the anxiety was something else. Something she had not felt in 3 years. It felt almost like hope. The idea that maybe her life could be more than just survival, that maybe she could use her mind for something beyond calculating tip percentages and managing food credits, that maybe, against all odds and logic, she could actually make a difference. She thought about her grandfather and the patience he had shown when teaching her how to help him navigate the world without sight. She thought about the veterans she worked with, their dignity intact despite their injuries, their determination to adapt and overcome. She thought about Danny and his smile when he successfully found his sandwich using the clock method. Maybe Leo was right. Maybe she did have something valuable to offer. Not despite her lack of formal training, but because of everything life had taught her. The question was whether she had the courage to try. Maya closed her eyes and made a decision. Tomorrow she would walk through that door. Tomorrow she would face whatever came next. And if she failed, at least she would fail trying rather than always wondering what might have been. The Hammond Interstellar Solutions building rose 60 stories into the sky, all gleaming metal and smart glass that shifted transparency based on sunlight. Maya stood on the sidewalk staring up at it, feeling very small in her best clothes, which consisted of a simple dress she usually wore to job interviews and a jacket Leo had insisted she borrow. Around her, people in expensive suits and high-tech business wear rushed past, everyone moving with purpose and confidence. She checked the time on her old comm device. 9:45. She was early because she always was. A habit born from working service jobs where being late meant being fired. Taking a deep breath, Maya walked through the main entrance into a lobby that seemed designed to intimidate. The ceiling soared 3 stories high with holographic displays floating in the air, showing company achievements and current projects. The floor was polished stone that reflected everything like still water. A security desk stood between her and the elevators. Maya approached and the guard, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looked up from his screen. Can I help you? I have an appointment with Richard Hammond at 10. My name is Maya Johnson. The guard's eyebrows rose slightly, but he tapped his screen. Yes, I have you here. Mr. Hammond left instructions for you. Take elevator 7 to the 42nd floor. Someone will meet you there. He handed her a temporary access badge. The elevator was glass-walled, and as it rose, Maya could see the entire colony spreading out below. The industrial district where she lived looked small from this height. The diner where she worked just a tiny speck among thousands of buildings. She felt like she was leaving her entire world behind with each passing floor. The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area where a young woman in a crisp suit waited. Maya Johnson? I am Katie, Mr. Hammond's assistant. Welcome to Hammond Interstellar Solutions. If you will follow me, the team is assembled in conference room 3. Maya's stomach dropped. The team? She had thought this would be a private conversation with Richard. Maybe a tour of the facility. She was not prepared to face a room full of people. But it was too late to back out now. She followed Katie down a hallway lined with awards and patents framed on the walls. Katie stopped at a frosted glass door. They are waiting for you. Good luck. She opened the door and gestured for Maya to enter. The conference room was large with a table that could seat 20 people. About a dozen people sat around it, most of them focused on tablets or holographic displays floating in front of them. Richard sat at the head of the table and stood when Maya entered. His smile seemed genuine and he walked over to greet her. "Maya, thank you for coming. I know this might seem overwhelming, but I thought it would be best for you to meet the team working on the ANI project. That is what we call it, adaptive neural interface." Richard gestured to the assembled group. "Everyone, this is Maya Johnson. She will be consulting with us on user experience and practical applications." A woman at the far end of the table looked up, her expression skeptical. She appeared to be in her 50s with sharp features and sharper eyes. Her nameplate read Dr. Helen Cruz. "Mr. Hammond, with all respect, we have been working on this project for 2 years. What exactly qualifies Ms. Johnson to consult on neural interface technology?" Richard's expression remained pleasant, but his voice carried authority. "Maya has practical experience caring for individuals with disabilities and volunteers, teaching adaptive techniques to veterans. She also has the ability to evaluate our work from the perspective of actual users, rather than theoretical models. That perspective is exactly what we have been missing." Dr. Cruz did not look convinced, but she said nothing more. Richard guided Maya to an empty chair and the meeting began. For the next hour, Maya listened as team members presented various aspects of the project. They spoke in technical language full of terms she did not understand. Synaptic mapping, cortical stimulation, haptic feedback loops. Holographic displays showed brain scans and complex diagrams that might as well have been alien writing. Maya felt increasingly out of place. These people had advanced degrees and years of experience. They were discussing neural pathways and quantum processors, while she struggled to follow the basic concepts. What had she been thinking? Richard had made a mistake, and sooner or later he would realize it. Then Dr. Cruz brought up a prototype interface designed for blind users. The display showed a sleek headband with small neural sensors. She explained how it would translate visual data into electrical impulses the brain could interpret. "Our testing shows users can identify basic shapes and navigate simple environments within 3 weeks of training." Richard turned to Maya. "What do you think?" Every eye in the room focused on her. Maya felt her heart racing. She looked at the prototype and thought about her grandfather, about the veteran she worked with, about Danny. She thought about what actually mattered to people trying to navigate a world not built for them. She cleared her throat. "Can I ask some questions about the design?" Dr. Cruz nodded curtly. "Of course. How long can someone wear this before it becomes uncomfortable?" "The prototype can be worn for approximately 4 hours before the user needs a break." Maya frowned. "So if someone is wearing this to navigate their day, to go to work or school, they have to take it off every 4 hours. What happens when they are in the middle of something important?" Dr. Cruz looked annoyed. "That is a minor issue we will refine in later versions. The priority is functionality." Maya shook her head. "Respectfully, that is not a minor issue. If I have to choose between technology that works perfectly, but I can only use part-time, or learning to navigate without it, I am going to choose independence. Comfort is not separate from functionality. It is part of it." The room went quiet. A few team members exchanged glances. Dr. Cruz's expression hardened. "We have to balance multiple factors: effectiveness, safety, production costs. We cannot optimize for everything simultaneously. I am not asking you to optimize everything. I am asking you to remember that people will not use technology that hurts them, no matter how well it works on paper." Maya surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. "You said users can identify shapes in 3 weeks. That is impressive. But what about in 3 months? 6 months? A year? Does anyone actually want to wear this long-term? Or does it become something they use occasionally because it is too uncomfortable for daily life?" Richard leaned forward. "That is an excellent point. Have we done any long-term comfort studies?" Dr. Cruz shifted in her seat. "We have focused on proving the concept works. Long-term wearability studies were planned for Phase 3. Maya looked at Richard. "Can I make a suggestion? Before you perfect the technology, talk to people who would actually use it. Not in a lab setting. In their real lives. Ask them what they need. What frustrates them? What would actually make their days easier? Because I guarantee the answers will surprise you." One of the younger engineers, a man named Peter, spoke up. "That makes sense, actually. We have been so focused on what is possible, we have not really asked what is preferable." Dr. Cruz stood abruptly. "Mr. Hammond, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" They stepped outside and Maya could see them through the frosted glass, though she could not hear the conversation. Dr. Cruz was gesturing emphatically, while Richard stood with his arms crossed, listening. Maya felt her stomach sink. She had overstepped. Who was she to criticize the work of experienced scientists? She was just a waitress playing pretend. When Richard returned, his expression was unreadable. Dr. Cruz did not come back to the table. Richard addressed the room. Maya has raised important points that we need to consider. I want everyone to spend the next week thinking about user experience and long-term practical application. Peter, I want you to work with Maya to develop a protocol for user testing with real individuals in real-world settings. Meeting adjourned. The team filed out, some looking intrigued, others skeptical. When the room was empty except for Richard and Maya, she stood quickly. I'm sorry. I did not mean to cause problems. I should not have questioned Dr. Cruz like that. Richard smiled. You did not cause problems. You identified them. There is a difference. Helen is a brilliant scientist, but she sometimes forgets we are building these devices for people, not for journal publications. You reminded everyone what actually matters, but I do not have the expertise to be here. Those people have forgotten more about neural interfaces than I will ever know. They know about the technology. You know about the people. Richard walked to the window overlooking the colony. I did not bring you here to compete with my engineers on technical knowledge. I brought you here to make sure we are building something meaningful, something that actually helps. You did exactly what I hoped you would do. Maya joined him at the window. What if I keep making enemies? What if your team resents me? Some will, some already do. Richard looked at her seriously. But this project is too important to let ego get in the way. Millions of people across the colonies are living with disabilities. If we can make their lives even a little bit easier, a little bit more independent, then it is worth any ruffled feathers. The question is whether you are willing to keep speaking up even when it is uncomfortable. Maya thought about her grandfather learning to navigate after losing his sight, the frustration and determination it took. 3 months had passed since Maya joined Hammond Interstellar Solutions, and the laboratories had become her second home. She arrived each morning at 7 and rarely left before 6, spending her days learning everything she could about neural interfaces while pushing the team to think differently about their work. The transition had not been easy. Dr. Cruz remained coldly professional, answering Maya's questions with barely concealed irritation. Several other team members had been openly skeptical at first, testing her knowledge and seeming to enjoy when she could not answer technical questions. But Maya had found allies too. Peter, the young engineer who had supported her in that first meeting, became something like a friend. He patiently explained concepts she did not understand and genuinely seemed to value her input. A neuroscientist named Dr. Sarah Kim had warmed to Maya after she suggested modifications to the interface placement that Sarah's own research supported, but the team had dismissed. Slowly, grudgingly, Maya was earning her place. The real breakthrough came from the user testing protocol she had developed with Peter. Instead of bringing volunteers into the sterile laboratory environment, they had started visiting people in their homes, workplaces, and communities. Maya insisted on spending full days with test subjects, watching how they actually lived rather than just how they performed specific tasks. One afternoon, Maya sat in the apartment of a woman named Gloria, who had been paralyzed from the waist down in a construction accident. The current prototype interface allowed Gloria to control her wheelchair through thought, which the engineers considered a success. But Maya noticed that Gloria still used manual controls most of the time. The neural interface works, Maya observed. Why do you prefer the manual controls? Gloria looked embarrassed. The interface is amazing, really, but it takes so much concentration. If I am thinking about where I need to go while also trying to remember what I need to buy at the store, or worrying about whether I turned off my cooktop, the chair gets confused. With manual controls, I can let my mind wander. I can just exist without having to focus so hard all the time. Maya made notes on her tablet. So the interface requires too much active attention? Exactly. It is like the difference between walking and thinking about every step. Normally your body just walks while your mind does other things. But with this, I have to consciously think about every movement. It is exhausting. That night, Maya brought Gloria's feedback to the team meeting. She explained the problem and watched as the engineers processed the information. Peter spoke first. That is actually a significant design flaw. We optimized for precision but not for cognitive load, Dr. Cruz frowned. The interface responds to intentional thought commands. That is how it is supposed to work. Maya shook her head. But that is not how people work. When you walk down the street, you are not consciously commanding your legs to move. It is automatic. If our interface requires constant active attention, people will not want to use it for everyday life. It will be a tool they bring out for specific tasks, not something that gives them real freedom. Sarah Kim nodded slowly. She is right. We need to develop a learning algorithm that can distinguish between intentional commands and background thoughts. Let the system become more intuitive over time, almost subconscious. The conversation shifted into technical territory that Maya struggled to follow, but she had planted the seed. Over the next weeks, the team worked on developing adaptive algorithms that could learn individual thought patterns and respond more naturally. It was painstaking work with frequent setbacks, but slowly the technology improved. Maya continued visiting users and bringing back real-world insights. She discovered that the visual interface designed for blind users gave some people headaches because the data came too fast. She found that the audio feedback system startled users in quiet environments. She learned that many people felt self-conscious wearing obvious assistive devices and wanted something more discreet. Each piece of feedback led to refinements. The team started designing with flexibility, creating interfaces that could be customized to individual needs and preferences. They slowed down data processing speeds and added gradual acclimation programs. They made the devices smaller and less conspicuous. One evening, Maya was working late in the laboratory when Richard appeared at the door. He had Danny with him, and the boy was using his cane to navigate the hallway. Maya stood and smiled. "Danny, what a nice surprise. Hi, Maya. Dad said I could see what you are working on." Richard looked slightly sheepish. He has been asking for weeks. "I thought maybe tonight would be good timing." "If you are not too busy." Maya glanced at the prototype she had been reviewing. It was a simplified version of the interface designed specifically for children, with reduced complexity and more intuitive controls. An idea struck her. "Actually, I could use a second opinion on something. Danny, would you be willing to help me test a new device?" The boy's face lit up. "Really, I can help?" "Absolutely. Come sit over here." Maya guided Danny to a chair and explained what they were working on. "We are trying to create something that can help people who cannot see to understand the space around them. It does not restore vision, but it translates information into something your brain can process. Would you like to try it?" Danny nodded eagerly. Richard stepped forward. "Is it safe?" Maya looked at him steadily. "I would not suggest it if I had any doubts. We have tested this version extensively on adults. The worst that can happen is it does not work, or Danny finds it uncomfortable. The moment he wants to stop, we stop." Richard hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." Maya retrieved the prototype, a lightweight band that fit around Danny's head like a sweatband. She placed it carefully and activated the system. The interface worked by using echolocation sensors to map the environment and translating that data into audio cues that played through small speakers near Danny's ears. Different sounds represented different objects and distances. "Okay, Danny, the system is on. You are going to start hearing different tones. High tones mean something is close. Low tones mean it is far away. The tone gets louder as you face directly toward an object. Does that make sense?" "I think so. Let me walk around the room and you tell me where I am." Maya moved to different positions while Danny sat very still, head tilted slightly as he listened. After a few moments, he pointed. "You are there by the window. Perfect. Now I am going to move again. This time I want you to stand up and try to walk toward me. Use your cane like normal, but also listen to the sounds. Take your time." Danny stood slowly, cane in one hand. He took a tentative step and paused, listening. The tone in his headset shifted as he moved. He adjusted his direction slightly and took another step. Slowly, carefully, he made his way across the laboratory until he stood directly in front of Maya. "I did it. You did. How did it feel?" "Weird at first, but then it was like the sound started making sense. I could almost see where things were, just not with my eyes." Richard watched with an expression Maya could not quite read. His hands were clenched at his sides and she could see moisture in his eyes. Maya looked at Danny. "Want to try something harder? I am going to set up an obstacle course. You will use the interface to navigate through it. Over the next 20 minutes, Maya arranged chairs, tables, and equipment into a simple path through the laboratory. She explained each obstacle to Danny so he knew what to expect, then guided him to the starting point. Danny moved through the course slowly but successfully, using the audio cues to navigate around objects. When he reached the end, he was grinning so wide it seemed his face might split. "Dad, did you see? I did not bump into anything." Richard's voice was thick. "I saw, buddy. That was incredible." Maya knelt down to Danny's level and carefully removed the headset. "You were amazing. You learned that so fast. How do you feel?" "Tired. My brain hurts a little from concentrating so hard, but good tired like after swimming." Maya made a note on her tablet. "That is really helpful feedback. It means we need to adjust how much information the system gives you at once so it is not so tiring. Your brain needs time to learn this new way of sensing things." She looked up at Richard, who had walked to the window. His shoulders were shaking slightly and she realized he was crying. Maya stood and joined him, giving him space but letting him know she was there. He wiped his eyes and laughed shakily. "I am sorry. I just never thought I would see him move that freely again. Even with the cane, he has been so hesitant, so afraid of running into things. But just now he looked confident. The technology still has a long way to go. This is just a prototype and it has limitations. But the potential is there." Richard turned to face her. "When you first walked into my company, some people thought I was making a mistake. Some still do. But watching Danny just now, seeing what you have helped create, I have never been more certain of anything. You are changing lives, Maya. Not theoretically, not eventually. Right now." Maya felt emotion rising in her own chest. "I am just asking questions and bringing back information. Your team does the real work. You are doing so much more than that. You are making sure we remember what matters. You are keeping us focused on people instead of just problems to solve." Richard put his hand on her shoulder. "My son is happy because of you. Millions of people will have better lives because of you. Never forget that." The success with Danny had energized the entire team, and over the following weeks progress accelerated. Peter developed improved learning algorithms that reduced the cognitive load Gloria had complained about. Sarah refined the sensory translation protocols to prevent the headaches some users experienced. Even Dr. Cruz seemed cautiously optimistic during team meetings, though she still regarded Maya with barely concealed skepticism. Maya had settled into a routine that felt almost normal. She arrived at the laboratory each morning at 7, spent her days reviewing prototypes and visiting test subjects, and usually worked late into the evening. Leo had started his first semester at Luna Technical Institute, on the full scholarship Richard had provided, calling Maya every few days to share his excitement about his classes. Life felt good, purposeful, like she was finally becoming who she was meant to be. Then everything started falling apart. It began small. Files that had been saved properly disappeared from the system. Prototype interfaces that had worked perfectly the day before suddenly malfunctioned. At first, the team attributed it to normal technical glitches. Computer systems were complex and errors happened, but the problems escalated. One morning, Maya arrived to find Peter looking devastated in front of his workstation. "What happened?" 6 months of algorithm development just vanished from the server. All my work on the adaptive learning protocols gone. Peter ran his hands through his hair. "I had backups, but those are missing too. Someone wiped everything." Richard called an emergency meeting. The entire team assembled in the conference room, faces ranging from confused to angry. Richard stood at the head of the table looking more serious than Maya had ever seen him. "We have a problem. Over the past 2 weeks, critical data has been disappearing, prototypes have been sabotaged, and now Peter's research has been completely wiped. This is not accidental. Someone is deliberately targeting this project." Dr. Cruz leaned forward. "Have you checked the security logs? Access records?" Cypher has been analyzing everything. "Whoever is doing this knows how to cover their tracks. The logs show authorized access during legitimate work hours, meaning it is someone with proper clearance." Richard's gaze swept the room. "I hate to say this, but the saboteur is someone in this room." The team erupted in protests and accusations. Maya sat quietly, watching everyone's reactions. She had learned in her years of service work to read people, to notice the small tells that revealed truth. Most of her colleagues looked genuinely shocked and angry. But Dr. Cruz's expression was different. Not surprised exactly, more calculating. The problems continued. That afternoon, A prototype that was scheduled for demonstration to the Colonial Technology Commission mysteriously stopped working. The commission was responsible for approving all new medical and assistive technologies before they could be marketed. Without their approval, the ANI project could not move forward. The demonstration had been critical, and now it was ruined. Richard rescheduled for 2 weeks later, but rumors had already started spreading. Maya overheard whispered conversations about how the technology was not ready, how Hammond Interstellar Solutions was rushing an unsafe product to market, how test subjects were experiencing dangerous side effects. None of it was true, but the damage to the company's reputation was real. Maya spent her evenings poring over project records, looking for patterns. She had always been good with details, a skill developed from years of managing tight budgets and tracking expenses. She noticed that the sabotage events aligned with days when Dr. Cruz had been working late alone in the laboratory. But that proved nothing. Many team members worked late regularly. Then Maya remembered something. She had kept her own notes throughout the project, handwritten journals documenting test subject feedback, observations, and ideas. It was an old-fashioned habit from before she could afford reliable technology. Every evening she transferred important information to digital files, but the original journals sat in her desk drawer. She started comparing her notes to the official project records. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Data that had disappeared from the servers was information that Maya had never digitized, meaning someone else must have documented it originally. She cross-referenced timestamps and access logs, following the thread carefully. One piece of evidence particularly stood out. 3 weeks ago, a test subject named Marcus had reported a minor discomfort with the interface pressure points. Maya had noted it in her journal and planned to address it the next day. But before she could, the official report filed in the system claimed Marcus had experienced severe pain and neurological symptoms. That false report had been cited as evidence of dangerous side effects. The report had been filed by Dr. Cruz. Maya sat back in her chair, her heart racing. She needed more proof before making accusations. Carefully, she checked other discrepancies between her notes and official reports. Again and again, the pattern held. Dr. Cruz had been exaggerating problems, inventing complications, and deleting progress reports. But why? Dr. Cruz had been with the company for over a decade. What could motivate someone to destroy a project they had worked on for years? Maya accessed public records and started researching. It took hours of digging through financial disclosures and corporate filings, but finally she found it. 6 months ago, Dr. Cruz had purchased significant stock in Nexus Biosystems, a rival company developing similar neural interface technology. If Hammond Interstellar Solutions failed, Nexus stood to dominate the market, and Cruz's investment would pay off enormously. Maya had her motive. Now she needed to catch Cruz in the act. She spent the next 3 days acting normally while secretly monitoring Dr. Cruz's activities. She noticed the scientist stayed late on Tuesdays and Thursdays, always alone. This Thursday, Maya made a show of leaving at her normal time but circled back to the building an hour later. She used her access card to enter quietly and made her way to the laboratory floor. Through the window, she could see Dr. Cruz at a workstation, her fingers moving rapidly over the holographic interface. Maya activated her comm device and began recording. She watched as Cruz accessed Peter's new algorithm files and began the deletion process. But this time, Peter had set up a hidden backup system that Cruz did not know about. Even as she deleted the visible files, copies were being saved elsewhere. Maya waited until Cruz finished and stood to leave. Then she stepped into the laboratory. "Working late, Dr. Cruz?" The scientist spun around, surprise flashing across her face before she composed herself. "Maya, I did not realize anyone else was here." "Yes, just catching up on some data analysis." "Really?" "Because it looked like you were deleting Peter's work." Again, Cruz's expression hardened. "I do not know what you think you saw. I know exactly what I saw. And I have been documenting everything. The false reports about test subjects, the exaggerated safety concerns, the deleted research files." Maya held up her comm device. "I also have a recording of you deleting files right now. You have no authority to investigate me. You are not even a real scientist. You are a waitress playing pretend in a world you do not understand." "Maybe, but I understand enough to know you have been sabotaging this project. I also know about your investment in Nexus Biosystems." Maya stepped closer. "The question is why?" "You are brilliant, Dr. Cruz. You could have led this project to success and had all the recognition that came with it. Why throw that away for money? Cruz laughed bitterly. Recognition? I have been with this company for 12 years. I have published dozens of papers and developed technologies that generated billions in revenue. And what did I get? A comfortable salary and a nice office. Then Hammond brings in you, someone with no qualifications whatsoever, and suddenly you are the hero. You are the one changing the world. Do you have any idea how insulting that is? Maya felt a flash of sympathy despite everything. I never wanted to take anything from you. I was just trying to help. You do not belong here. This is a world for people who earned their place through education and hard work, not through luck and sentiment. Cruz's voice rose. Nexus offered me what I deserve, a leadership position, equity in the company, respect. All I had to do was ensure Hammond's project failed so Nexus could succeed. Maya shook her head sadly. You threw away your integrity for ego and money. You betrayed people who trusted you. And for what? So you could feel important? I am important. More important than some waitress who got lucky because she was nice to a rich man's son. The laboratory door opened, and Richard entered with 2 security officers. Maya had sent him a message as soon as she saw Cruz deleting files. He had been watching the confrontation through the security cameras. We have everything we need. Dr. Cruz, you are fired immediately. Security will escort you from the building. I have also contacted the colonial authorities about corporate espionage and sabotage. They will want to speak with you. Cruz's face went pale. You cannot prove any of this. Actually, we can. Richard gestured to the security footage and Maya's recording. We have documentation of everything. The false reports, the deleted files, your stock purchases in Nexus. Your own words just now were quite illuminating. As security led Dr. Cruz away, she looked back at Maya with pure hatred. This is not over. Nexus is still ahead of you. Their technology is better and they will reach market first. Richard waited until Cruz was gone before turning to Maya.